that for as much as God's power is eternal, Christ also is eternal. Put me to shame. St. Ambrose used this argument long before I was born. See it? See it? Do you see that? I thought this was an argument that I saw, and here the Lord shows me, no, don't be that arrogant, and I pray I never am, and God forgive me for my lustful impurities and coming and may he deliver me. Here, Ambrose, long before I existed, used the same argument. You see it? Are you not amazed at these men of God? They put us to shame. Here's the argument. Here now another argument showing clearly the eternity of the Son. The apostle says that God's power and Godhead are eternal. He's quoting Romans 1:20. And that Christ is the power of God. For it is written that Christ is the power of God, wisdom of God. That's 1 Corinthians 1:24. If then Christ is the power of God, it follows that for as much as God's power is eternal, Christ also is eternal. Is this not humbling? Here we. And then if you read what he says about begetting, because he's saying, so you're saying a father who begets is older than the son? He goes, all right, let's take up that argument. Let's use that argument and let's take it to its conclusion. He goes, all right, well, human fathers also, right, have sex and get a woman pregnant. So are you saying that happened with how the father begat the son? You see, do you ask me how he is a son if he have not a father existing before him? You see? And he destroys the arguments. See, so he says, you want to liken God's begetting to the begetting of creatures that have bodies. All right, we'll play that game. And he then destroys the argument, see? We'll play that game. See? And another brilliant argument right here. Let me just read one more snippet. Let me get you the argument, the link to the article. Here it is. I'll play that game with you. Here's the article again. Looking good, little sis, if agree. Right? Here's the article again. There's that link. There it goes. Now watch this argument. Chapter 11. I may do a session just on the fathers again and read what they say about begetting. I gave you the link right there, folks. There it is. Now watch here. Chapter 11. And this comes from, by the way, and I just took some. I couldn't quote all of it. Exposition of the Christian Faith, Book 1. So if you click on it, I'll take you there. Read the entirety. It was too long. I can't quote all of it. It'll be too long. And then I linked to other articles here. Ignatius. We just did some on Ignatius recently. Justin Martyr's Witness to Christ's Central Eternal Deity. Justin Martyr's Christology Revisited. Irenaeus, the deity of Christ. More from Irenaeus on deity of Christ. Did Tertullian deny eternal nature of Christ? This is the article I used yesterday. Tertullian Doctrine of the Trinity. The early church on eternal begetting of the Son. Exactly. If you read the early Christians, you won't be Protestant anymore. I'm letting you know. Those who choose to do so is because they ignore the fathers and only quote them when it agrees with them. Let me read this right here. Just one. Look at this, how he destroys the claim. If you're going to compare the way the Son is begotten to the way we're begotten, if the divine generation has been subject to the limits of time, if we suppose this, barring from the custom of human generation. Okay, let's now use the analogy of human begetting. Then it follows further that the Father bare the Son in a bodily womb and labored under the burden while 10 months sped their courses. Obviously, that's stupid, right? So the begetting of the Son is not identical to the way we beget children, idiots. But how can generation, as it commonly takes place, be brought about without the help of the other sex, if we're going to use your logic? You see, the common order of generation is not the commencement. And you think that courses of generation, which are ruled by certain necessities whereunto bodies are subject, have always prevailed. What it's saying is, see, because you're dumb and stupid, you're taking your human experience, what you see as a human, among human beings and animals who have physical bodies, that a parent begets a child later in time, and you think that that generation applies to God, and then you subject God's generation of the Son to the limitations of finite, temporal, physical bodies. See what he's saying? You're stupid. We don't try to use our human experience, human observation of how life is begotten, and then impose it on God, because God exists when there were no bodies, no space, no place, no time. So we don't look to our experience in order to understand how God begets the Son timelessly. You understand his argument? You understand what he's saying here? Because if I follow your logic, then God could not have begotten a son without the opposite sex. And the son would have to be in a female womb. That's Mormonism, right? You require the customary course. I asked for a difference of sex. So you're telling me, well, look, I begot my son later in time. I go, all right, well, then where's the opposite sex who got pregnant by God if you're going to play that game? You demand a supposition of time, that begetting takes place in time. That of order. I'm saying, no, God was there before time. You inquire into the end. You use the end result, meaning us being created, as opposed to going to the one who began this and see how he begets and how unlike that act is to our begetting. You understand what he's saying? You see the brilliance? So he's showing the absurdity of assuming that the Son is begotten in time, when his opponents admit the Son created time. They go, hold on. You admit the Son created time. He was there before time. But then you're saying he's begotten in time. How is that possible? If he created time and rules time, then he's before time. So his begetting cannot be a moment in time. You contradict yourself. That's what he says. In this post, I quote him. You see? And he says, when we speak of God's womb or God's heart or God's face, he is not a physical body. So it says, you hear speak of the womb, acknowledge the truth of undoubted beginning. Womb is a metaphor for God beginning spiritually. When you hear of his heart, God's heart, know that here's God's word. Heart is not a physical heart, but we mean the word springing forth from his heart, quoting Psalm 44 in the Greek. Of his right hand, don't assume he has a physical hand. Think of his power. When we speak of his face, don't think as a physical face. Just think of wisdom. These words are not to be understood when we speak of God as when we speak of bodies, you see? See the genius? See the genius?